we'll probably make a start right now. So, hi everyone. Thanks for joining the webinar today. Let me know if you can hear me just fine. If you can't, just give me a sort of question, and then I'll be able to turn on my audio, for example. So today we were going to be joined by Christina, who's our head of business development, and one of our colleagues from Strategen, but they're not able to join due to health reasons. So they sent me their notes. So I'm going to try and cover their notes on this webinar or workshop today. So first off, you're thinking, who are we? And so this about us. We are Saroni Global. Saroni Global is an economic development agency or marketing agency for economic development organizations, investment promotions agencies or IPAs, and we typically help with branding, value proposition development, and lead generation. Our experience is twofold in that we have backgrounds in development economics and also marketing experience. We're based in Wales in the United Kingdom, and we have consultants across the 6 continents. So I am currently based in Wales in the United Kingdom. Christina is normally based in England, and then some of our other managers are based across the world. So going into the workshop. So the format of today's workshop is we really wanted to do something that is more practical as opposed to just theoretical, right? So we're going to require you to make a lot of notes or take a lot of notes. And the reason being, to develop a good value proposition from this workshop, you want to actually be doing it, right? As opposed to simply listening to us talk. Now, after this, we'll send out the workshop slides. So if you do forget something, you can always refer back to the workshop slide, and then you can actually craft your own value proposition based on the workshop slide. So the first thing you want to always ask yourself is, what is a value proposition? And a value proposition really is a statement that helps your customers perform certain tasks, confer some benefits for your customers, solves problems for your customers. So what do we mean, right? So it's some of the things that you or your organization does for your customers. So for an investment promotion agency, this could be what your place does for investors, right? It could be what the organization, the investment promotion agency, does also for investors. So as an investment promotion agency or an economic development organization, you could effectively have 2 value propositions, one for yourself as an organization and one for the place you're representing or for the places you're representing, right? So each place wants or should have its own value proposition. Your organization should have its own value proposition, as well as the places that you're trying to promote. If it's not just places you're trying to promote, if it's sector specific, yes, each sector you should think of as having its own value proposition. Now, once you do it once, it becomes a lot easier because then you can sort of copy and paste, because most things would be the same. And so you can just make small changes to specific areas of the value proposition statement. Now, a value proposition statement is not a slogan. It's not a positioning statement like we are the #1 supplier in the market, or we are the best place to work in the world, something like this. Or it's not a mission statement, right? Like we exist to do X, Y, Z for people. A value proposition is quite deep. And so what we're going to do here is try and take you through the steps through which you can create a unique value proposition for your place. So a value proposition always starts with a brand. So if you have not crafted a brand just yet, one of the first things you would want to do is to define what your brand is. So your brand is what you promise to your investors. It's what your investors say about your place. It's what investors will get from your place. It's how you treat investors. It's how you advertise to investors. etc., etc. This is all about the brand, right? If you look at these images down the bottom here, when you look at the first image, that's the brand of London or the United Kingdom. It conjures certain things in your mind. As soon as you think of London, you think about maybe Big Ben, you think about Houses of Parliament, you think about all sorts of things. And if you think about the United Kingdom as a whole, you think about certain things as well, right? And the same for Germany. If you see the specific image of Germany, you think about certain things. Now, every single country has defined what its brand is. And so then they do spend a lot of money promoting the idea of that brand, right? It's the same for Singapore. They have now a brand in mind, and now they try to promote that particular brand. So that's the idea that we're trying to get to, right? So the first place we want to start is, what is our branding identity? Now, I'd like you to write these things as we go along. We want this to be, if you like, a workshop. So by the time we finish this webinar or workshop, you can go and say, hey, I'm going to create a brand or value proposition document for my organization, and we can start using it right now. That's what we want you to be able to get from this session, right? So the first thing you want to do is you want to list out what your place does for investors. If you're an IPA or an investment, an EDO, economic development organization, you want to list out the things your place does for your customers. So list out maybe 5 things that your place does for your investors, right? And then secondly, you want to write out what is unique about your place and how you do it. So for example, it could be your background, it could be labor force, it could be geography, it could be culture, it could be incentives. So you could say something like, we have a high number of talent in cybersecurity, if that's the area you're trying to go for. It could be, we have the most arable land for wheat cultivation. Again, if that's where you're trying to go for. And so then what do you stand for as an IPA, or as an just as an organization in general, but also as a country or as a place? What do you stand for, right? We stand for excellence, we stand for honesty, we stand for integrity, etc. You would note when I show that image of Germany, Germany has this reputation as being very efficient. Now, that is part of Germany's branding strategy. So you see efficiency. If this was being done for Germany, they would have something like efficiency as part of their what they stand for, right? So it's important to think about all these things ahead of time. You want to effectively list them out so that you know what you're going to have to create in the minds of your investors from the beginning. Of course, then you have to back it up with the things you do, right? You can't say you're most efficient and then your place manufactures cars and they are not very efficient. Then it ruins the brand reputation. So again, what do you want to be known for? Let's say you want to list this down. For example, you say you want to be known for providing the best place for investors in clean tech, as an example, right? You could say you want to be known for providing the best place for technology companies. Whatever it is that your sector or your focus is, write down what your organization or your place wants to be known for. And so then the next thing you want to do is to write out how you make a difference in the wider world. So for example, you could list out something like, we provide the best place for companies in X category. So you could be clean tech companies who pay equitable wages and provide medicines to solve cancer, for example, right? You're providing good wages for people in your place. You're also solving a big problem, which is cancer. So you want to write that down. What or how does your organization or your place make a difference in the world? Next up, you want to write up what your role within your industry or sector is. So as a place, you want your investors to think of you as a certain person, right? And one of the best ways for your investors to think of you as a trusted advisor. Now, if the investors are thinking of an IPA or EDO, they definitely want to think of that EDO or IPA as a trusted advisor. Why? Because they want to see you as being the source of help when they come to you, right? So an investor, you certainly don't want an investor to think, yeah, if I go to these people, I'm not quite sure if I'm going to get the help I need or not. You want them to think of you as, the trusted advisor. So write down what your role within your sector or your organization should be. And also, there are maybe global trends you might want to tap into or to seek to influence. Now, this is always quite interesting. I've seen a lot of IPAs and EDOs in recent times sort of chase the most recent trend, right? So from 2020, when the pandemic started, it was remote working and cloud adoption. So you saw quite a lot of IPAs and organizations chasing cloud adoption and remote working as a value proposition. So, a lot of organizations changed their value proposition to reflect that, hey, you can come here, we have cheap rents, cheap policies to acquire land, etc., etc. So you can move your operations here, and so come to our place. That became people's sort of value proposition. So that you could tap into that. Now, the current trend now, as might be experienced in a lot of places, is the rising energy cost. It could be that your place has a lot of solar panels, for example, or energy is quite cheap in your place. So you could use that to craft a value proposition. So you want to write things like that down. We provide a base to offset your energy cost, for example, because we have green facilities where you can relocate to within 3 months or 3 weeks, whatever it is that you want to pitch or use in that value proposition statement. Rising inflation, if you have a way that you could say to people, hey, if you move to our place, you're not affected by rising inflation because we have the lowest cost of production in the world. Sure, you could tap into that, right? And the key here is you can leverage these trends in your value proposition statements and in your marketing to your target investors. So it becomes a lot more easier to convince those people to come to your place as opposed to the next place available. All right. So the next thing now is the time where we are actually starting to develop the value proposition. So every single value proposition works well if it has a customer in mind. So to start off, you want to list out who your key audiences are if you don't already have that defined, right? So as an organization, you might be targeted with, let's say, specific industries to attract. So let's say you want to go for clean tech. So, okay, the industry is clean tech. Well, what locations do you want? You want to write up everything. And then you want to list out how your place makes a difference for your key audience. So, for example, you could write down something like, we help clean tech companies grow their revenues and by allowing them access to a market with huge demand and provides access to other regional markets. That's an example, right, of what a potential place could say. Now, in your case, it could be completely different, but effectively, you want to list out the things, how your place makes a difference to your key audience so that you can use these messages to convince them. Now, we start going a bit deeper. So if you've not already done so, you want to create a customer persona. Now, a customer persona is, if you like, a semi-fictional archetype that represents traits of a large segment of your audience, right? So after this workshop, if you need a customer persona template, just send us an email and we'll be able to send you one of the templates we tend to use. And so it's pretty straightforward. Once you have this template, it's just a case of filling out the various segments within the templates. So a couple of things you want to define when it comes to creating your customer persona. So you want to write out the jobs or tasks your customer has to do. You want to write out the problems your customer has to solve in relation to those tasks. You want to write out how they feel about those tasks. You want to write out what tends to go wrong when they perform those tasks. And the reason for all these things is because you want to then create solutions for that particular customer. So if you're going for clean tech or clothing or manufacturing, food manufacturing, right, or high-tech IT, you want to write out the task that persona has. You want to write down the problems they have and how you meet those problems. Now, this is where the value proposition statement really takes shape. So you want to spend time doing this exercise. Again, we're going to send the slide out after this. So if you're not following me as I'm talking through this slide, you can always do it in your own time. But it's critical that you take some time to do these steps, because this is what is going to help you craft the value proposition statement that is unique for your organization and unique for your place, so that when you go to market to try and advertise and look for investors, you don't sound like all the other places who are trying to effectively attract these same investors, right? All right. So next up, you want to write up your persona's benefits. So required benefits from your customer's perspectives. So the first thing, let's say you ask yourself, if you were your customer, so by customer, I often mean, the target investor you want to attract. If you were your customer, what do you need to happen? Okay, maybe if your customer needs to increase revenue, what does that mean? Maybe they need to increase revenue through exporting or through expansion to a different market. Okay, what benefit is necessary to me? Expected benefits, from your customer's perspective, what do I expect? What do they expect from the product or services do they buy? They expect a higher quality. They expect high standard of delivery, high commitment, you name it. Again, if you were an investor and you were going to invest in a country, what sort of levels of service would you expect? What would disappoint you? Example, low quality, low commitment, poor service, things like this. Desired benefit from your customer's perspective. In an ideal scenario, if your customer relocated to your place, what benefit would they have? So again, you want to put yourself in your customer's shoes, right? And say, if I am the target customer, let's say the clean tech company or the pharmaceutical company, what would be my desired benefit, right? I would want to increase my revenues in year one as a result of expanding abroad. That could be a desired benefit. So you want to list out all the desired benefits that, from your customer's perspective, they would experience if they were to move to your place, right? Because this is effectively what you want to communicate to that particular target customer. So once you've written down, for example, the job or task to be done by your customer, the benefits they want to achieve, the problems they're going through, next up, you want to rank these problems by importance. So we've given an example here. Let's say I am the customer, and so then I want to grow revenues. This is my objective. So I want to grow revenues to 5 million per year in the next 12 months. Okay, great. Having a partner who has experience in my sector is very important to me. Problem I have right now is a lack of experience, wasting time on the wrong things. If the problem is ranked, I would say it's probably ranked number 10. So you want to rank everything. Now, what you notice when you do this exercise is that when you list out the various jobs that your customer wants to do, the benefits to them of doing that job, the problems they face, you would realize that not every single problem is important enough for your customer. Now, if you don't have some of those customers that you desire, of course, you can, or if you like, use an agency to do the research for you, right? To actually speak to these potential customers, to collect that feedback for you, and then so at least you've got something to base it on. It's always better to base that research on actual data as opposed to simply guessing, right? So that might be a way to actually obtain that data. Now, once you've then listed out, the problems, the benefits, etc., you want to also, if you like, map the value. So you want to look at benefit markers first. So again, you want to list out a couple of things. How does your place satisfy your customer's most important need or needs? Let's say your customer's most important need was to generate revenue, right? That's one of their tasks that they want to do. Okay, what else did they want to do? So you want to list down maybe 5 things your customer really wanted to do based on the importance we had here, right? So you rank it from 1 to 10. Between 5 to 10 are most important. Anything below 5 is not important, right? So you want to take your top 5 that you get here and then put it here. So how does your place, so we move on to number 2, how does your place provide measurable improvements in terms of success, performance, efficiency? You want to write it down, right? Our place provides improvements in success, performance, efficiency by doing X, Y, Z. How does your place help your customers save money, time, or effort? Again, you want to be very specific. Okay, by coming to our place, my customer, the investor, is able to save money because they cut down labor cost by X percentage. Write it down because you're going to use that information in your value proposition statement, right? So these are benefit markers. How does your place help your customer gain exceptional quality? Again, if you have an exceptional labor force who are highly skilled in a particular industry that you want to use, you can use that as an example. So you can go through all these steps and write out your benefit markers for your value proposition. So next up, you want to write out the problem solvers. So again, same thing. You want to list out how your place helps your customer solve certain problems. Now, most problems can be categorized as cost problems. So how does your place help your customer save cost? We just spoke about that. Or make more money. We just spoke about that. Make your customer feel better, alleviate frustrations. Now, this is all very interesting, right? So, for example, let's say your place has an existing trade policy with another market. Your customer wants access to that market. You want to communicate that, hey, by coming to our place, you can avoid your frustrations with entering this particular market if you come to our place. Why? Because we have this trade arrangement with this market you want to target, and it's going to allow you to market to this particular market because we already have the trade arrangement with them. As an example, you're telling them how you reduce challenges and difficulties, alleviate frustrations. You want to list out all these things, right? How does your place prevent your customer making a mistake? Now, not every single thing would apply to your place. That's fine. But the important thing is you want to write out as many ways as possible that your place helps your customer solve problems, gives your customer benefits. These are the key ingredients of a value proposition, right? Benefits and problem solvers. If you can communicate to your customer that you help them solve a problem, you help them get some benefits, that is it. That is the bulk of your value proposition. So now that we have defined what the benefits are, how we solve problems for our customer, you want to match the two. So, you could just make as a simple table, you can just go back to the previous page, take the problems that you listed out, take the benefits that you listed out, and then write out how your place helps your customer solve those problems, right? So you can say, okay, customer has problem A. This is how we help them solve it. Customer is looking for benefit A. This is how our place helps them get that benefit, right? So you can list out everything in a table format as you see here, and then move to the next stage. So now that you've got the problem, you've got the benefit, now it's time to match the two together to apply it to your brand. In your case, your brand is effectively the place that you're trying to promote, right? Of course, as we said earlier, you always want to choose the most important ones, which is why we mentioned you want to rank the benefits and the problems. Why? Because you want to only appeal to the most important things, right? If something is not important, you don't want to waste your time building a value proposition for. Now, with every single value proposition, one thing we always say is you can have multiple value propositions. So you can have, if you're targeting multiple industries, you could have multiple value propositions per industry. If you're targeting multiple people within an organization, let's say, one of your target customers is the CEO of a company or CFO, your value proposition for that particular audience might be different to your value proposition for, let's say, the procurement manager or the marketing manager, for example. So you could have value propositions for different segments of your audience. So now we want to effectively bring together the value propositions that we've written. Now, the key ingredient of every single value proposition, you would notice, is one of two things. So every single value proposition, the key ingredient is your offering, effectively your place, the category you're serving, the benefit you deliver for that customer category, right? So that's one way to articulate a value proposition. Now, if you ever use this framework, you can write as many value propositions as you want. The second example is the offering, the customer category, the task that we help the customer do, and the benefit we help the customer deliver. That's another type or another framework that you could use to effectively state your value proposition. The third framework is the offering, the category, the way you help customers solve their problems, and the customer category. Last example, your offering, category, task, problem. What does this all mean? Let's look at a real example. So for example, a value proposition statement following this is, and this is for Wales, where I live. So we say, okay, Wales is the only place in the world that helps pharmaceutical companies looking to increase the rate of testing and get to market faster. So a couple of things to break down in there, and I'll come back to that. We provide zero cost phase 1 to 2 testing for new products and services for pharmaceutical companies. Join the pharmaceutical revolution in Wales. That's a call to action, right? So if we were to break down this value proposition statement, this is the offering, right? Wales as the place is the offering. What do we help our category do? So we help pharmaceutical companies who are trying to solve a problem, get a benefit, and now we tell them how we do it. You don't have to add this, but you could add this just to make it a bit more clearer. Now you could end your value proposition statement just by getting here, by where the faster ends. That is fine. It effectively communicates what your organization is about. Or you could go further and describe what you do for your customer even more. And lastly, to effectively get your customer to do something, you want to always include a call to action, right? So this is the reason why we say, join the pharmaceutical revolution in Wales as an example. So the point, and if you like, the last point I want to add, end on is this. Value proposition development is a complex topic. It's not something you could do on this webinar alone or on this workshop alone. It's a pretty, normally when we do this sort of thing, we do it on over a 2-day period where we take organizations through various questions to actually get them to deliver a value proposition. And at the end of that, they have a strong value proposition for maybe multiple sectors. And then they have a marketing strategy to try and communicate that value proposition that they have for their place. So thank you. That's the end of the workshop. If you do have any questions, please do ask right now. I'll hang on in for about 2 minutes for questions. If there are no questions, I'll close the workshop. As we mentioned, we'll send the slides out. If you do think of any questions after the workshop is closed, just send us an email at contact@seroniglobal.com, and we will be able to help you out. All right, so I'll hang tight for any questions right now. All right, so we had a question from someone who said, what is the difference between branding and a value proposition? So a value proposition encompasses your brand, right? Your brand, we actually mentioned this at the start of the presentation. So a value proposition encompasses absolutely everything, not just, you know, the branding statement. So your value proposition is more than just your brand. It's how you do things, how you help your customers, how you show your customers benefits, how you solve problems for your customers, how you communicate your problems to your customers. Branding is part of your value proposition, right? Branding, or like the way people think of your brand, is part of your value proposition. Your value proposition is what you promise to your customers, is the sort of encompassing feature, and branding or your brand is part of that value proposition. So the two can be quite sort of interchangeable, but they are different in a couple of ways. So I hope that question was answered. Another question has come in, and the question is around how long it normally takes to do this sort of activity. So fairly straightforward exercise. Like I said, when we normally do this sort of thing, it normally takes us maybe a day or two where we go through the various questions. We do it in a workshop format where we'll sort of ask you a lot of questions, you answer, we effectively work together on, you know, what needs to be done, and at the end of it you have a value proposition defined. You can go off and effectively implement it for your organization, or it can be done for you on those workshops. So, you know, if you feel like, hey, this is complicated, you need help doing it, just let us know. Send us an email, contact@seroniglobal, and we'll be able to help you define that exercise. All right, so I'm just going to hang on for another second to see if there are any direct questions that have been sent my way. So it looks like there aren't any more questions. So thank you everyone for joining the webinar today. We'll send out the slides later on. We hope you found it useful. Any questions at all, just send us an email and let us know. It's been a pleasure talking to you and presenting to you. I hope you found it useful. Any questions, send us an email, contact@seroniglobal.com, and we'll be more than happy to help you out. Okay, have a nice day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye now.